Good evening. We are live. I said that I was going to be here tomorrow evening with Dr. Mom. It is January 5th, first episode after the holidays. Mom, how are you?
Well,
Well,
I am well, yes.
what else is going on?
It's cold. I thought I deluded myself and said it would stay warm for January, but I should know better. It's
It's freezing
cold.
up.
Yes. And we
Okay.
hate it.
So tonight's topic, because I know that you don't have a lot of time, we're talking domestic violence, and we're not just talking, spouse on spouse, man on woman, woman on man, couple on couple. We're talking children on parent and parent on children domestic violence. How often do you think this goes overlooked? Let's just ask that question first.
Overlooked. Well, more and more in the pandemic, we have to say pre and post pandemic. Here's the problem, there's no place to send people right now. So unfortunately, it's getting more and more overlooked. I'm having a hard time finding placements for people who need services because they're overwhelmed by the pandemic. So domestic violence, it's called now intimate partner violence, is on the rise. It's dramatically increased, and there's no resources to help because staff gets COVID, places get breakdown in COVID. But I think I don't know the exact numbers, but I can tell you that it's on the rise, both the abuse itself and the overlooking since the pandemic.
Okay. John, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Sorry. So, John, you're jumping into it late, and we're just going to get right into it. So, I noticed over the holidays that there was and I don't even want to say an uptick, but there was a number of articles that were produced by various outlets, and it's a lot of domestic violence, but it was a lot of child on parent domestic violence, parent on child domestic violence, and not just teenager parent issues. We're talking like grown adults, things of that nature. I think one of them was apparently the mom and dad have custody of a young child, and the father got upset over something. The details have not been disclosed just yet. Both of his parents are alive, but he did shoot both of them. I think one in the back and one in the head. But so my mother was just talking about domestic violence. I had asked her if it goes overlooked or how often it goes overlooked. She made a quick comment, a reference even that because of COVID, things that the process is a bit slower. That there's not places for people to go. Doctors get sick. Sometimes there's trouble with inpatient and processes and things of that nature. But I mean, if there's an expert here, it's not that my mom isn't one, but domestic violence and usually the first thing that comes to mind is couples engaging in physical or verbal altercations or both. But what are your immediate thoughts, beginning thoughts on child on parent and parent on child? And again, we're not really talking teenage and adult, but we're talking a little bit older with grown children and parents.
Well, it's tragic anytime anybody loses their life, and so sorry to hear that. Um, but it can happen, in any direction. The violence from the young adult children to the adults. You know, it, you know, it can be, it can, be parents to the kids and to each other. I mean, it does happen. But I think what it really is, Brian and Dr. Jonas, is we don't know as a culture, we don't know how to identify and alleviate our fears. We have fear of losing things, fear of not getting things, and and then we also have sadness, and disappointment and shame and embarrassment. Those primary emotions that we experience as we're interacting with other people. And we just don't know how to identify it and alleviate it. So we turn it to anger, but the anger doesn't make any of that go away. It doesn't heal anything. And it's just tragic that we just aren't doing a better job of teaching people how to process through emotional pain.
So let me
You know,
pause right there with you real quick. So, Mom, we're gonna kick it back to you. You deal with people, and I know John does as well. But when you build that relationship and therapy continues for an extended period of time, you really get to know people and not just who they were or who they are today or who they were a week ago, but things that took place during the formative years when they were children, things that happened that they didn't even tell their parents or their loved ones about. So, in the matter of grown children and violence towards the parents, we'll just go that direction first. I know this is a very broad question with tons of answers, but let me ask this. How often do people blame mom and dad when they're in the hot seat with you?
A lot, quite a bit.
And it just stems and it goes back to recently, prior, they never got over something, maybe mom's boyfriend, maybe dad's girlfriend, maybe something transpired as far as violence.
Well, yeah, they'll say a lot. Violence repeats, like John was saying. They never learn coping mechanisms. So interactional cycles of violence repeat. So if they didn't learn it in one generation, it's passed down to the next generation. But so of course it would be that violent people are blamers and shamers, because if they took responsibility, they wouldn't be violent. That's what John was saying. They didn't learn the proper coping mechanisms. But I think I just wanted to expand on your point, John. So the amount of women that abuse their children now is alarming. That
I
really
have
scared
seen that
me.
that a lot of moms killing their children, being abusive towards their children. When I was posting the promo, unfortunately, I think where's the one? It says Colorado mom accused of stabbing her 11 and 18-year-old children to death. Just to give everybody a brief overview, I haven't seen the update on what actually transpired. Law enforcement was notified by people in the vicinity. When law enforcement arrived, both children were laying on the ground severely wounded, and the mother had only stopped. I put an emphasis on only stopped because a neighbor, a civilian, had jumped in and restrained her. When the police arrived, he had said that she had just stabbed both of the children. And again, both children did die.
No sadder case, right? And so the increase in filicide being the homicide of a child by a parent, is alarming how much it's increased. And so I want to add to your point, John, that the killing of children by their mothers is more common than fathers. And here's the profile of the mother who kills her child. She's a single parent mom who's
Hmm.
been exposed to domestic violence herself. John will say that's not a surprise, right? That has limited resources, and we put too much on her. And I'm not for any second condoning it. And she cracks because there's no support system. There's an abusive husband or ex-husband, and she's with the kids 24/7. And a portion of them have some kind of disability, either mental or physical. And of course, with the exception of, the Hollywood stars that do bad things to their kids. With the exception of that, most of them are economically deprived. So that's the profile of the parent who snaps. So I want to add to your point, augment it with, and we're not looking out and having resources for parents that are spending way too much time with the kids with no other outlets. And again, not to be repetitive, the pandemic makes that what worse.
I'm going to cut you off
Because,
right
right?
there. Yes, the pandemic makes it worse. Absolutely. We'll get into that in a few seconds. So, John, you people, when they come to see you, they're often there for a reason, perhaps pertaining to something that made its way through the court system. But what, just to kind of add to what my mom's saying, and I'm going to ask you a question. What tools do you need to work with parents who, when you finally get them to start explaining what's going on inside their head, they say it's work, it's the kids, it's a combination. Maybe Joey's getting in trouble at school. Maybe Lisa's dating the wrong guy. I don't have enough money to give them what they want. And as we know, if we don't have enough money to give them what they want, it's not the end of the world. We try to figure it out with them, but guilt starts to set in, right? So a number of things. I'll let you take it away. Whose phone's going off? Is that you, Mom?
Yeah.
Go,
They want,
go ahead, John.
well, you know, guilt is, a shallower shade of shame, and we're feeling shame when we are judging ourselves through other people's eyes, looking down on ourselves. And, when we don't have those emotional coping skills, it's very hard to, um, well, let's say it's easy to blame other people, whether it's a child blaming a parent or a parent that blames their parents, or that they blame their partner, or they blame their children. Blaming is one of the easiest things for all of us to do. And it's a way that we are trying to avoid responsibility for where we are. Because what I find, to make the transition from blaming to taking responsibility for my part, this is where a person has to learn how to identify exactly where their fears and shames and sadnesses are, and then see them for what they are, an area in my life that I'm not giving myself the love that I need. And then when they can give that, "Are you a cat?" The respect, the understanding, acceptance, caring, appreciation, and trust to themselves, then it's easier for them to take responsibility for their part. The reason we want to blame others is because we're afraid if we admit that we dropped the ball, that we're going to lose everybody else's respect and everybody else's understanding and acceptance and their caring and appreciation and trust. And when we're not giving it to ourselves, we need it from other people. And so we're fearful. And so no, it wasn't me. It was you. You caused it. See, and the thing is, we all play a role in our life.
Can I
There's
pause?
things that we do, and there's things that other people do, but it's how we respond to things that gets us in trouble, not the things that's happening to us.
I totally agree with that note, and I'm not just saying it to get to the next point. But after what you just said about blaming and blaming and blaming, mom, here's one for you, and I'm sure we've heard it, in the movies, or perhaps a friend or family member. Um, yeah, Dr. Joan, I'm not where I wanted to be in my life. I could have been a lawyer if I didn't get pregnant at 22. I had to drop out of college. I couldn't have gone to grad school. Yeah, Dr. Joan, I wanted to work for Disney and be an animator for Pixar, but my girlfriend got pregnant, and even though things didn't work out between us, I am where I am, but I didn't get to do what I wanted to do because of my kids. How often do you hear that, and what type of tone? Is it, sincere regret of becoming a parent? Maybe they should have made better choices. Is it more like, things could have gone that way, but I've accepted where I'm at, and I have great kids, and I'm happy about it. But I'm sure it's a mix of both.
He already knows what I'm going to say, John. You see how he does question, embedded in question. I just want to say one thing before I answer. So, back to John's point, if you ask me, in my experience about the adult kids that physically harmed, it's usually elderly parents. So it's usually somebody in their 50s and the parents in their 70s or 80s. They were kids, adult kids, who did just what you're saying, Ryan. The violence against the parent is because they didn't launch. They didn't have their adult life. They didn't go to law school. They didn't do this or that. So I where violence was against parents, it was a lot blaming the parent for not reaching the goal. And what I call that failure to launch into your adult life. I hear that a lot. I'm sure John does. I'm sure every therapist hears that a lot. So you're talking about what role somebody gives, what amount of weight somebody gives to an external factor. And it's just what John's saying. Until you convert to internal factors, until you say, yes, some things in the universe didn't work to make it easy for me, but I still could have done it. Until you make that transition to say the reason you didn't get to where you wanted to is probably internal, not external, then you have a problem in psychological health. The people that are psychologically healthy and maybe still didn't get where they wanted, but they say, but that's the choice I made. I could have done this or that, but I made this choice. And I feel it worked out okay. It worked out for the better.
And
Do you
here's what I
agree?
got to ask you,
Mhm.
just to put, on top of the pyramid, because I think it's a big one long term. And I'm sure you have couples who say, yeah, my girlfriend got pregnant when she was 18. We were poor, we were broke, but I stayed with her. She was a great partner. I supported her when she got the job. She supported me when we got the job. We didn't have any help from our parents. We had no money, but we figured out the childcare situation. And now 10, 15 years later, we made it. I'm sure that happens as well when people take responsibility and work really hard, grind it out, figure it out, and success lies on the other side.
We actually have some of the wealthiest families I see started out that way with
I
very
I,
right.
I love those stories. Yes.
But what were they? Extremely hardworking.
Right. It's the work ethic and the mindset. And to what you and John always say, and my friend Jocko, it's starts with taking responsibility, right? Well, I don't have any money, so I can't do it. It's I'm gonna deliver pizza after my full-time job and I'm gonna figure out how to get there.
It's the blaming thing that we're saying. But I look at it as a mental health expert as the internal, external. There's always going to be external factors that are going to get in the way, right? There's always going to be those things in the environment that are going to get in the way. And so, you know, I don't have that much empathy. I don't know about you, John, because I came from poverty and just went to school. I looked around and said, not much is going to happen here unless I do something academically. So I don't always have the most empathy for the external factors because I know what you can do if you put your mind to it.
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, well, Dr. Sandra Bloom, who's very prominent in the Philadelphia area for decades now, she's a psychiatrist. She's now at Drexel. She used to be at Friends back in the mid '80s and into the '90s, and she wrote a book called Creating Sanctuary. And in that book, she points out how you can have two people that go through basically the same traumas and the same experiences. And one person is able to go on with their life and pull themselves out of it. And the other person gets taken down by the trauma. And the thing that she found that is the difference maker is the degree to which that person received external support and had the ability to give themselves internal support. So when you learn how to give internal support and you're getting external support from others, you're more likely going to be able to pull yourself through that and work that extra hard and get things done. But if you don't have any external support and you aren't able to give yourself the internal support, they're the ones that are most likely to get taken down by their traumas. And, trauma does a number on us. And a lot of times it happens when we're young and we just don't realize how severely it handicaps a person. And, I hear people saying, oh, they're crazy. No, they're not crazy. They're a person who's been traumatized at some point in their life and isn't able to process through that emotionally in a way that they're able to really bring that love back into their life from themselves to themselves so that they can be successful at whatever it is that they're attempting to do. And, and when you don't have a role model, then you're not getting external support, but when you see people that, profit from working hard, it motivates you to work hard, whether it's in school or, getting jobs or bringing in money. And so that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's always a big one. You always hear it really it's about who you surround yourself with. And I think that's a big, big part of it for sure, right? Because it you feel motivated when it's just when your friend is like, "Good for you, man," and here's what I did, right? And that's simple, like because you don't want to be with negative people, or they're like, "Oh, that job." Come on, John. We know you. Okay, I went to college with you. You know that you're not good at being consistent at things, whatever the case may be, right? But when you surround yourself with positivity, whatever the form of positivity is, everything just starts. Oh, we lost John. Hold on. Okay, John's back. Whenever you surround yourself with positivity, things start to go better. So I need input from both of you because this is something that I struggle with personally. And please don't cancel me if you're listening to this now or later. Sometimes I see parents post memes and kind of vent on Facebook like this meme is speaking to me. It's a meme or something where it's talking about how a mom or dad is overworked and stressed and they're trying to keep themselves together, right? And they find comfort in that meme because they can relate to it. But then, a part of me is saying why are they like, this is going to sound awful. The part of me is saying, I love my kids. I love being exhausted by my kids. I
Mhm.
love having to get up early with my kids. Everything about my kids, I love my kids, right? And I'm not saying that anybody who posts these is a bad parent, but sometimes I'm just like, how can you be overwhelmed in a negative manner when kids are just such a positive joy of light and energy, right? But they can be exhausting. And here's where I'm struggling. Here's where I'm struggling. And this is one of my fears, that it's something that just will never be able to figure itself out. Even though that person is venting or struggling, and they're saying that the kids and work has them stressed out, a big part of all of it, if you will, in my opinion, is that some people just cannot process stress and things in a manner where they can look at it in a positive way. So what's the solution for that? Because to me, I always have this fear that it's this never-ending whirlwind that people will always be caught in, and it will continue to drag down individuals to whatever point, depression, whatever the case may be. But it's a whirlwind, I feel like, and I don't know what the answer is to help people get out.
But that's why I always say that nobody wakes up one day and kills their kid. Nobody wakes up one day and goes and shoots up the school. It's been a long time coming. That's what you're talking about. By the time they're making that post, it's been a long time coming. And that's what John was saying. We have to teach people to know I'm in trouble a lot, a lot sooner than when they make that post. And we didn't even begin, just to bring this back to domestic violence, to say of those people posting that the stress is getting high, how many are turning to drugs, alcohol, gambling, all kinds of things that don't help and only make the stress worse.
So real quick, because I need to say something that didn't come out the correct way when I was saying it just now, but you just helped me, is that I take a second after I'm kind of asking myself why this parent is so stretched out. Then I catch myself and remember that not everyone is capable of processing stress the same way, right? And I always say that's why there's only one seat at the CEO. There's, only one lieutenant, there's only
Mhm.
one captain, but because they were in some cases, in most cases, able to process stress in a different manner and create a positive outcome, which is the promotion, the salary increase. So I always have to struggle and remind myself that not everybody handles stress the same way.
Yeah, well, and not everyone is able to give themselves that internal support. But I think kids are also a lot more joy when you have two parents that are
100%.
helping to raise them.
Yeah.
Um, you take your favorite meal and you enjoy it, but you eat that meal every day for every meal, and you're not going to like it. So you
Right.
have kids that are challenging to raise, but they're full of benefits and joys. Um, when you're a single parent and you're not getting help emotionally or financially, um, it can be real
You will,
daunting for that person.
and you'll feel it every day, right?
Yeah, and when you're struggling to keep a roof over your head, you know, and and society plays a role in this too. There was a very interesting uh, piece on NPR that I heard today on Fresh Air, um, where this gentleman did a lot of research on uh, the supply lines and things like that, and how it impacts our society. But I heard a piece where he was talking about, like truck drivers. Truck drivers used to make really good money when they were part of the union. And then in the 80s, it all got deregulated. And now truck drivers are making, some of them are making barely minimum wage when you put in all the hours that they're spending. What he was saying was that, um, if you're doing the long haul driving, you're spending 21 days out of 30 on the road, away from your family. And when you put in all the hours and how they pay you by the mile. So when now, instead of by the hour, so that when you're sitting waiting to get loaded or unloaded, you're not getting paid. And so the salary goes way down, and then people aren't able to have a comfortable living. You know, the middle class is getting squeezed by corporations who are trying to get every cent they can out of the worker. And Amazon is an excellent example of that. They have all these, you know, artificial intelligence devices and things that help to make sure a person is working efficiently. But, you know, he said that, 1 out of 4 is going to be being told that they're not producing enough. And the whole thing is that, they figure by the end of a year, they're going to have 100% turnover because they think that they can just have people come in and people come in. But eventually they're going to run out of people, and then they're going to have to change. They're either going to have to raise their rates or, allow unions to come in so that it becomes more fair. And, unions came about because industry was taking advantage of people thinking, you don't like it? I could hire that guy right behind you. He's hungry. He'll work for less than I give you. And that was what was happening, 100 years ago. And, but then unions got, too powerful, and then they started taking them down. So, there's all kinds of factors that play into things, but when we can be more supportive of each other and inclusive of each other, we're going to benefit. But when we're fighting each other and it's, survival of the fittest, so to speak, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why what John's saying, the downward mobility, the fields that have been decimated by the pandemic, people spending time in the house without their outlets. This is a big part. I think violence in families is escalating. Besides the
I had
things I
COVID.
said. Hmm.
I had COVID last week, and I was
And
home. And
what'd you find?
for 2 or 3 days, I started to feel very uncomfortable, like I did before the W opened. But I remembered I do have a job, and I do remember that even though there was a time where it feels like things weren't going to get better, uh, I was able to. Don't worry about it, Mom. It's a bot. It's not a real
Okay.
comment. That things would eventually get better, right? But it doesn't take long for that uncomfortable mental numbness to set in, especially with everything that's going on, and the stimulation sometimes of the phone, and we all need to put the phone down a little bit more. But to what you're saying, Mom and John, doesn't take long for that the then
Anxiety.
the negative fears and the
Hmm.
anxiety, and then like I said, for a few days I was like, oh man, I do not like this. Like I physically don't feel good right now. I can't wait to get back to work.
One of the families that I work with, they don't single parent family. Father doesn't pay child support. Lost their car during COVID. So the mom's home with the kids. No transportation. It's not good. It gets heated between the mom and the kids.
Hmm.
And so fantasize with John and I, you know, what if you didn't have W to go back to?
Yeah,
What
I'd
if
be all
you,
sorts of torqued up.
right? What if you're home with escalating bills, nothing to look forward to, the kids screaming? Maybe you had some help. Here's the other thing, grandmoms, they're older, so they can't come in the house. Every day I hear the grandparents bailing out of helping. We understand why, because the kids are in school, daycare. But John, I was thinking when you were saying about corporations, all these billions of dollars, they understand that domestic violence is escalating, families are struggling. There's no collective efforts on their part to fund things, right? Nothing.
No.
No social, very little social responsibility. I shouldn't say no, because somebody will say that's wrong, but
Well, I'm sure from a PR standpoint, right? I mean, not me necessarily, because if I had the money in my company, I'd be all in, right? But I would imagine that it's a sensitive topic for Nike to say, hey, we're going to blast a domestic violence campaign, and we're going to give money to this, that. Because even though your intentions are good, right, you're still going to get the Nike's doing it for the women, right? I'm just giving an example
right.
there, right? I'm not speaking sincerely. Nike's doing it for the men. What does Nike know? They're just a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They don't care about them, right? And all of a sudden, even if you're trying to do something good and your intentions are good, um, it's just a tough PR point to get involved in domestic violence. Like I said, you have to have the guts to do it. If you manage it correctly and weather the storm, I'm sure somebody could turn it into a very life changing campaign. At the same time, tensions are high regardless
It's a
right now.
sensitive topic. Aren't the Eagles doing something, guys, right now? I
Usually
saw
the
the news.
NFL does something, I
They
think.
have something they started. I was glad to see that today because we need that with what's going on in the world. But I think we have to raise awareness. One of the things I wanted to say tonight, as at your opening statement, Ryan, about how often does it get ignored, to tell kids and parents not to ignore it and keep trying to find some resource. Don't give up. Don't
So
take the
okay, so
attitude.
so we're talking a lot about what's going on. And Mom, I don't know how you are on time. John, she has to leave a little bit earlier tonight. Sorry, we the show had started and I didn't get a chance to text you. But let's jump in that direction, okay? If the police are involved, it's too late, right? And unfortunately, something may have gone terribly wrong or is about to go terribly wrong. But when it comes to parents and children, and you see it often, right? The parents are sometimes quick to argue with the grown children as well, and it just goes back and forth. I know Monica has a friend whose husband left the family business, and now the parents aren't talking to the son. And without going into too much detail, I feel like in some cases with parents and children, it can just be this never ending circle, blame, arguing. Parents, in some cases, I'm sure Jewish mothers are big on this, feel that they must be loved. They're owed the attention, they're owed the gratification. I'm just making a joke, Jewish parents, but parents can feel that sort of mindset. So how do we help parents and children? I mean, it's not like I can go to marriage counseling. How do I convince mom and dad? Why don't we go to therapy? How do I convince myself that there's some things we need to work on and we got to go to? Actually, Mom, do you even have parents and children who came to you as grown people because they figured
A
they need to
lot.
work some things out?
No, actually, we do have a lot. Just like I said, the ones who, a growing trend, I don't know, do you see it, John? A growing trend of, uh, it's more men who never left home and never started a career. So 30, 40-year-old men, 50-year-old
Before
men living after off their 70-some-year-old mothers.
before you say anything, real quick, I just read an article today. I think it was last week or something. They arrested a son. He murdered and dismembered his parents. He was telling everybody that he worked for SpaceX and that he was a successful accountant, and he was living at home. And dad kept asking him, "Why aren't you paying rent?" And he didn't have any money. And finally, I guess something transpired and everybody snapped. But um, it was a young man living at home with his parents, and things went terribly wrong.
Mhm. How old was he, Rick?
I think they said he was like 32.
Yeah, it's that failure to launch if they don't launch into their own life. But yes, we have families like that that come. What you're asking is about a battle for who's got the problem. So sometimes it's hard to convince the parents to come in. Sometimes it's hard to convince the kids to come in because everybody wants to do this. Say the other person's the problem.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is that how? What would your route, Mom, and then we'll go to John. What are some solutions? Because if I love my wife and things are going horribly wrong, we're screaming, we're arguing. Which, real quick, I need to say one of the things Jocko said, and I know we've all said this before, but he said at the seminar, if you're having issues at work, and I repeat it now that I've heard it, if you're having issues at work, guys and girls and gals, everybody in between, don't bring that crap home with you. Don't bring. And Jocko said, don't bring it home to your 7-year-old. Don't bring it home to your wife. Right? Okay, I got sidetracked. But the point is, if I love my wife and we're arguing back and forth constantly, day in and day out, and we're up all night arguing, and we leave on a bad note and come home, we're already arguing again. At some point, one of us or both of us may be like, we have to figure this out because I love you and you love me, and this isn't who we were when we met, and I want to work things out, and we can go to counseling, or we can go see John Anthony, or we can go see Dr. Mom. But when it comes to parents, I just feel like, there's this mindset that mom and dad will always be there, or my son or daughter will always be there. Maybe somebody gets cancer, maybe somebody gets sick suddenly, right? But I feel like the mindset is different where when you're married or you want to work on your relationship, sometimes you feel like there's no time and we have to figure it out. Whereas when it comes to parents and children, you've known each other your whole life, so the mindset is they'll be there in a week. They're going to come around to me. I'm not coming around, and I feel like that can be a vicious cycle in itself.
Well, your comment about don't bring it home from work. To me, that sounds just like Nancy Reagan. Just say no. Just say no. So, because if my foot catches fire while I'm at work and I come home, that fire isn't going out because I'm home. My foot's still going to be on fire. And if I don't learn how to put that fire out, either when I come home or when I'm at work, then it's going to be real hard for me to be able to have the full attention that I need to give to my wife and or husband and kids when my foot is on fire. And emotional trauma is like having a foot on fire or a body part on fire, and you can't just ignore it and say, "Well, I just won't walk, and then I'll be okay." You know, you have to heal the wound in order to be able to function at the maximum effect.
But here's what I have to
And
say to that: that sometimes it's not going to be immediate. And the person that Jago was talking to was a first responder, police officer, and Jago was he was asking him on tips and all things like that, right? So I'm not saying that we can't address it, but if my shift is over and I'm a nurse and I just lost a patient and it was a 14-year-old kid or something, if you're a police officer, you don't have that luxury of putting that to bed right then and there, you know.
exactly,
Right.
you
But so
know,
I get what you're saying. You have to have that coping skill.
yeah. If I was just got home from my shift as a policeman and somebody was shooting at me and I had to shoot back, um, I'm not going to be able to just come home and, hey, how's your day? Oh, it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
How are you, hon? You
Yeah.
know, because it's real fear, because it almost cost me my life, and we can't just keep numbing out to things as a way of trying to cope with them or distract ourselves from things as a way of trying to cope with them,
But
because numbing out and distracting doesn't work. It doesn't heal because it doesn't allow me to find just where my fear is and what I need to do to alleviate it. So, and first responders, they have it really tough. First
Yeah.
responders, firemen, policemen, EMTs, they go through traumas, on their daily routine, and sometimes there's multiple traumas,
and
you
now
know.
the ones I treat, not to keep harping on the pandemic. Can you imagine doing it now and being worried about the virus? But I think what Jocko might be saying, Ryan, I don't know, but my guess is he's talking about displacement. So if you come home and you want to share something, but you don't displace it, right? And that's a big thing in domestic violence and family violence is
Yeah,
displacement,
I can't remember
right?
exactly what he concluded. I know he said more, but he told the police officer the first thing he did when he got home was he told him he should take his uniform off before say hello, kiss the kids, run upstairs, take your uniform off, take a shower, whatever the case may be. But um, you know if that's your uniform, take it off.
Right. But just back to that point about displacement, I think he
Ah,
means you can't come home and dominate and change the whole mood of the house because of what's coming or what happened at work. You still have responsibility how to process that with the family. And
right.
I think, what do you think, John? I think that whole displacement is a big part of when people snap because they're
Oh
so
yeah.
used to that blaming and putting the anger. And one
Well,
of the
yeah.
first, I don't know what you think about this, but one of the first cases I saw young out of school. Ryan's always picking on our culture, but it was a Jewish family where everybody was highly educated except for the youngest member. And he still had a good job, but wasn't as educated as everyone else and his parents and siblings. And on the night that he beat his wife, honestly, like OJ beat Nicole Brown Simpson, on that night, the trigger was she didn't line dishwasher right, and he had told her multiple times how to line up the dishwasher. So that was his
That's a
excuse.
control
She
thing.
was
He
right.
feel he's not.
But
But so
but
Well,
it's the displacement of, oh my God, I
yes,
told her so many times. I told her so many times. I'm an
right.
engineer. We
Because
just
there's so many things they can't control that they're trying to find
exactly.
some area that they can control. And you know, it's and it is a displacement. I remember when my wife was carrying our twins. You know, I wanted to get a. She had to be on bed rest. And from April, the twins weren't born until till end of July, and I was wanting to try to help out, and I was going to put a folding table, by her bed, and she didn't want it there, and so she got upset, and then a very good friend who happened to be Jewish, and who had 4 kids of her own, and that was like a mother to my wife. Um, she said, when you're going through pregnancy, you don't have any control of your body. The hormones and the child, it has taken over your body. So you try to look for some place that you can control. And the nest is the one place that the woman can control when she's going through pregnancy, especially when it's the first time and it's all foreign to her and it's a new experience. So you're trying to find some area that you can control. And so that displacement that Dr. Jones talking about, you know, when you have something else that's filling up your emotional cup, and then you come home and the slightest thing happens, and you just use that as an excuse to blow up and try to empty your emotional cup. Well, the blowing up doesn't help to alleviate the fears and the shames and the sadnesses that are filling up the cup to begin with. And the person who um, you're blowing up on, certainly, no one ever deserves that, but they weren't even the cause of filling up your cup. So if we don't, it's about learning how to take responsibility for our emotional pain. And if we aren't able to do that, then we're going to be taking it out inappropriately. And that's where our society is. We got a lot of people
so
that are taking out their pain inappropriately,
so
whether it's
okay.
political or whatever.
And a
So
lot
back
of
to my
pain right now.
no, no, but time out. Back to my original question. What are some solutions for the parents and the grown children when it's going to be back and forth? They better come to me, or the other way around. Because I feel like that's a big one with parents and children. Is that it's nope. I'm the parent. I raised them. Do you know how much I sacrificed? They better come around to me. Or I did. My dad, I didn't say anything when he got his new wife or this, that, whatever the case may be, right? But a lot of back and forth unresolved issues. So what do we do?
Well,
How do we get the
well,
parents
see,
how do we get
it's
the
it's
parents to
it
Dr. Mom or to John Anthony?
um by phone.
Parents and children. Parents and children. Parents and children. But that's what I'm saying is that
It's
how when it's that dynamic, right? I'm saying that there may not be uh, uh, the immediate effort from
it's
both parties. We need to work on things because they feel like they have forever or they're just that stubborn. So what are some ideas on how to
I
get
just think
better?
that's a big, huge question. I just want to break it down in a few parts before I go. So I don't have that much trouble getting everybody in. You break it down into small steps. So you're talking about fractured relationships with repetitive themes, and you give them a little bit of success. A lot of times the parents are very negative, they're critical. You get them to restrain and be a little more positive, then they get a positive response from the child. It's not really a child, an adult child, and you build on small steps.
Pause,
And
pause. I got to know, what are the parents upset about? They didn't become the police officer, they didn't become the lawyer. What are they upset about? What does a parent have to be upset about in some cases? I got to hear
Well,
this.
expectations, expectations. The
Right.
root
So
of
yeah.
all
the kid did not
psychological,
become who they wanted them to become.
not necessarily that, the root of all psychological trouble or unfulfilled expectations. The kid moved to California. The kid is in their
But
sexuality
why
is
does that
different.
bug
The
parents?
kid expectations because
So what's the parents'
your
expectation?
your kids are still young.
But I'm
You
saying
have
that,
a way to go with that.
The parent has an expectation of how they should be as a parent
Exactly.
and how the child should be, what they want their child to become.
Right.
And that's part of the problem because, the way we say it, in the Safe Counseling Program is Supportive Alliance is they have positive fantasies that they turn into expectations.
okay,
And
I get that. I
we can
get that
have the
point of it.
positive fantasy, but when you expect it and it doesn't
Hmm.
come out, see, that's what's devastating. And
No, hold
see,
on,
and
hold
then
on.
I feel guilty because my child isn't who I thought they should have been.
Right. Okay. So pause real quick. Pause real quick, because I want my mother to answer this. So why do parents get upset when grown children move away? Let's just say that to go do what they want to do. Is it because they're not going to be home for the holiday? Like, why is that such a problem? I'm curious.
A lot of times it's an intergenerational theme. So depending on the ethnicity, some families live close together, very close together. And if 3 generations, 4 generations, nobody moved out of state, it upsets them because they have that expectation that the kids should follow suit. I don't think it's simple as
And
you're
that will
saying.
and
Like,
that will disable relationships. You're telling me people stop talking over this. I mean, I'm not saying I won't believe
I
you,
mean, do
but
I
I'm
think
just
they
it just
stop
goes to
talking?
paint the picture of
Well,
how difficult it could be to fix things when something like that is like the kid did what they wanted to do, they're happy, but mom isn't happy because they moved out of the family circle.
But
well, see,
parents aren't all like you, right? They I didn't mean to interrupt, John, but they have kids, and come on, what's it mean to be a Brown family member? It means you're going to go to law school. It means you're going to be part of the family business. Affluent families have tons of problems when the kids don't want to carry on the business. The parents go crazy. What do you mean? I worked my whole life. They can make so much money. They go crazy because you have to look at the reason somebody had the kids in the first place. Sometimes it's to carry on traditions. I'm not judging. I'm just saying these things happen. I don't know that they cut the kids off completely, but it makes for a lot of tensions in some subsection of parents where the kids didn't follow expectation. I said this before in the podcast. We've had wealthy families, millions and millions of dollars, cutting the kids off from inheritance if they didn't marry somebody with the same ethnicity. So if they're Italian and they didn't marry an Italian, they're not getting the inheritance. If they're Caucasian, not marrying somebody Caucasian, listen, it's an ugly thing to say, but I've heard some of the most racist, anti religion remarks in my office. And if the kids didn't follow suit, they were going to be cut off financially. That's something I still hear today. I'm not taking a stand saying it's healthy or not healthy. It's just a fact of a subsection of parents that do that.
well, and my experience is it's the parent who is getting their "Are you a cat" from their child
Hmm.
or from being a parent to the child. And so when I take care of you, you know, as a mother or a father, I get, I get, respect and understanding and acceptance and caring, appreciation, trust because I'm doing that. You're old enough to take care of yourself now. What am I going to do? I've been giving you all this. I want to keep giving you. I feel good when I give it to you. You know, I remember when my dad, when I told my dad that I didn't want any more money from him. It was one of the most difficult things in my life. When I was, just getting out of graduate school, because I could live off of the money that my dad gave me because it didn't take much for me when I was that age. But I wanted the sense of knowing that I was taking care of myself. And so I said, Dad, you don't have to give me money. I don't want any more money. Oh, I don't mind. I got it. I don't mind giving it to you. No, I don't want it. I want to know that I can support myself. See, but the parent, they don't have their life. They have a life for their child. And then when their child doesn't need them, then they don't know what else to do with all of that. They don't know how to get that love because they weren't giving it to themselves. And so the parent who's able to give that love to themselves in the form of the "Are you a cat?" And give it to their children, and then when their child goes and does something and goes away, it's like, great, more power to you. But if you're my source of "Are you a cat?" and you're my child, that's going to be a problem. Say,
You also, and we did get off some of the topic of domestic violence, but I guess all these roads could lead
No,
to
this
it.
is good. It's good.
But Ryan, when you're in mental health, you try not to judge. You try very hard to put everybody's behavior in context. And like I said, if generationally and culturally families learn one thing, it's hard for them to break from that. And the second point I wanted to make is what John said: everybody has a different reaction to trauma. Sad but true. A lot of the Holocaust survivors, they're not alive anymore. But I'm old enough that I practiced in a time when if the grandparents were Holocaust survivors and the kids dated somebody not Jewish, the grandparents went berserk. But I tried not to judge that. Your grandmom, who you never met, she lost all her family in the Holocaust and said to me, have friends of all religion. Otherwise, this whole thing was a waste. She went the other way, like John was, you know what I'm saying? She was like,
Yeah.
be with whoever you want. That's what this was all about. Everybody goes different ways. You try not to judge, but you try to work through it. And you try to do what you said, which is to say nothing's worth losing the relationship over. If the parent's goal is that the relationship's more important than anything, then the relationship stay intact. But not every parent is going to say that, unfortunately.
And
And that's been
then
my experience.
and then you make more money after the parents die because the kids have unresolved issues and they'll never get closure.
Mhm.
A quarter joking, but the rest is serious because I feel like that's one of the saddest things in the world is not having closure on things.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to excuse myself. I want to give one plug. I'm going to be in a Zoom call about insomnia. And I bring that up. Insomnia is rampant now in the pandemic, and insomnia and lack of sleep leads to a lot of irritability and a lot of aggression in people. So we need to make sure as mental health experts that people are sleeping well, basic habits of health, because all these things lead to poor control of emotions. Lack of sleep for days, and we got people not sleeping for months. And I'm like, this is going to have a bad outcome
Yeah.
because they're going to get too aggressive and poor control. So thanks for having me, guys. Be
No,
well.
thanks, Dr.
take care.
Malvi.
Happy New Year.
Thanks. Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy
Take
New
care.
Year.
Bye bye.
So, John, it's 8:54. It's a good run. Final thoughts on this random topic that you dove into. Let me get my mom out of here.
Um,
I know it was a very different, right?
well,
Well,
different but the same.
it's your feel. Yeah.
You know, it's like I've had people say, about when I podcast, I get feedback, from other people who knew people, and they say, well, he's always saying the same thing, basically. And it's like, yeah, I am, because it boils down to the basics, identifying your fears, bringing love from your life from yourself to yourself, move away from blaming other people for why my life is the way it is, and take responsibility for my part, healing my past wounds so that I'm not going to keep bumping into them and react to them. I can learn how to respond to things. And, when we can learn those basic concepts, then we're going to be able to get through that. But it's not something that you can just give a person a piece of paper and they read it and then, oh, okay, like a map. Oh, okay, so I turn left here and I turn right there. Okay, I know how to get there. Because you see, when we're growing up, we've learned when we get things that are really frightening that we go right to the amygdala part of the brain, which is in the base part of the brain. And that's where we either fight, flight, or freeze in our reaction. And that's good in survival when we're fighting something life-threatening like a bear. But we can have so many fears of negative fantasies that we bring on to ourselves because, well, if that happens, then this is going to happen, and then that's going to happen. And we cause real fear in our life, even though what I'm fantasizing about isn't real, hasn't happened, and maybe won't even ever happen. See, and when we don't see the power of our thinking and see the pain that we cause ourselves, in addition to the traumas that we experience as we're interacting with other people in life, that's one way that, so in order to respond to all that, we have to use the thinking part, what they call the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's behind the forehead. And when you learn how to route things through there in order to respond to fearful situations, see, then you're going to be making better choices and you're going to have better outcomes. But if you don't and you just react because you're doing things that you learned as a child, numbing out until I can't numb out anymore, and then I blow up and I turn it to anger that I direct at others or at myself, or distracting myself so I don't feel anything, or resorting to addictions. All those things are things we learned as a child because we only had the mentality of a child, and we have a more mature brain and mentality, but we don't even realize that there are other possibilities because we just keep doing what we've been doing. So that's what I would say as a summary.
Good summary. No, no. To your point, and I get it, and it's all reps, as you and I have said many, many, many times, right? The mental health is a workout, just like the physical workout.
Yeah.
Can't just do it once, not to put John Anthony and Jocko together again, but one of the things that they kept saying over and over again at the seminar is that this mindset, extreme ownership, it's hard, right? And taking and giving yourself "Are you a cat?" all the time is hard, and taking responsibility, all this, right? Working on your mental health is not easily, especially because what is everything? External factors, right?
Right.
And it's just it's not easy by any means.
Yeah, and I've had people say, "Well, why do I always have to be the one that that does that? Why do
That
I?"
owns up, yeah.
Yeah, and the answer is because it's your life, and if you want your life to be better, then this is what you need to do for your life. And if you're going to wait for somebody else to make your life better, as the saying goes, don't hold your breath.
And a big tool that is often overlooked when you're in control of your life, right, is just walking away from a situation, right? Whether it be somebody bumped into you at Wawa and he took it the wrong way or she did, right? Do I need to engage in a verbal altercation that could ultimately lead to one of us being killed? Nope. I can just be like, all right, cool, you win, right? But on a bigger scale too, right? In domestic and partnerships, right? Sometimes you have to be the one to say, I'm going to take a time out, I'm going to detach. But, in a lot of cases, and I make this joke sometimes, but it's I guess it's maybe half funny, maybe half not, because it can be a reality. Sometimes in marriage, or a conversation about bigger things that a couple isn't agreeing on suddenly turns into, well, when was the last time you changed the dirty diaper? When was the last time you leave me the car and it's always on empty? It turns into a ton of things that it doesn't need to be because people don't detach. Would you agree?
Well, it's because people don't process through something so that they don't have anything to fear. If I'm detaching from something, from a real foot that's on fire, that's not going to be good for me. But if I learn how to put the fire out, then I don't have to anything to fear anymore about my foot. So it's not about detaching. It's about processing through the pain. Then I'm going to better able to handle whatever it is that I'm going through. Say, and so, looks like we have some either Russian or Bulgarian friends
Yeah,
signing
they're
in there.
bots. They're bots. They're like probably like little hacker bots. Hi, thanks for watching my show.
Yeah, well,
But
that's either Russian or Bulgarian, the Cyrillic alphabet.
yeah, definitely.
See, there was something I was going to say, and then I got distracted by
You
the
got
bots.
distracted by the bots. But I
that happens more and more as I get older. I get more easily distracted.
I get distracted too. Don't worry. It's like I have to like really like I'll even walk back to where I last was and stand there for like a good 30 seconds, and I'll be like, oh, that's what it was. But yeah, to kind of wrap things up, just wanted to touch on the topic of domestic violence with you and Dr. Mom this evening because I just felt like the cases were overwhelming last week, and I know that not every case makes it to the media outlets, but there was just a lot of them. And I know my mom talks about it offline and online, just about it being a trend, an unfortunate trend. So I just wanted to touch base with both of you this evening and get your thoughts on it. I'm sure we'll talk about it further in the days, weeks, and months to come. But John, if you want to give everyone your information before we sign off.
Um, I can be reached by email at contact@supportivealliance.com, or you can go, so it's contact@supportivealliance.com, or the website is www.supportivealliance.com.
Copy that. All right.
See, and
Well,
what,
yeah, go
what I
ahead.
just want to say about the domestic violence, see, stress, trauma adds to it, and so when they got the trauma of COVID and how it impacts and changes things, it causes more emotional pain for people. And the whole thing is that the reason why they're violent to begin with is because they don't know how to process through their emotional pain. And so then it's just easier to blame somebody else or to take it out, like your mother was saying, she was calling displacement, you get I come home, somebody else at work filled up my cup, and I take it out on you when I come home, and it's so we have to learn how to stop vomiting emotionally on
And to
other
be fair,
people.
a lot of us right now, right? I think with everything going on, without starting the podcast all over again, we're waking up and our cups already have some coffee inside of them. Wouldn't you say? Whether it just be like, it's COVID again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just seems like these days we wake up and we already have some beverage in our cup.
Yeah, and it would be nice if it was drinkable beverage, but what it is, it's beverage that's been in there for so long that now it's getting sour and it's going, it's rotting, or it's becoming rank. You see, and when I had a wise man said, if somebody gave you a bottle of wine, it could be the best tasting bottle of wine that you've ever had. But if you have a cup that has something sour in it, and then you pour that wine into that cup, you're not going to taste good wine. You have to empty that cup that has all the bitter, sour, old, stale wine or coffee, and then when you put the new coffee or the new wine, whatever the beverage of your choice, you're going to be able to enjoy the full flavor of that beverage. And we go through life and we can get a really great person or thing that comes into our life, but if we haven't emptied and healed those old wounds, it's going to sour that new situation. So
100%, 100%. So John and I agree as always. And John, thank you very much for joining me and Dr. Mom this evening. A little bit of a crossover episode that we put together last minute. But to everybody listening and watching, thank you very much for your attention. We will see you all next time. Take care.
yeah, and I think this was our best podcast this year.
So far, at least. Hopefully, it's only up from here. We'll see everybody later. Take
It
care.
was also our worst.